to Unashamed and Afraid, a show unashamed about sexual addiction recovery and unafraid of coming unto Christ for healing, where we share real recovery stories, learn from experts, and share resources that actually work. So join us in being unashamed and unafraid. James, remember that one time we were using our Zoom software and we spent 20 minutes moving chords around when the truth is we just needed one more set of headphones?
That one time 2 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So we'll start with the perfectionism of us as our guests, Matt and Natalie. What's up?
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here.
They must be happy to be here because they stayed after a half hour of shenanigans. I was thinking they were just going to log off, but so we're doing it. So hailing from the mighty Washington, Utah, not to be confused with our country's capital or the actual state. It's the cool part of St. George where there's an In-N-Out burger.
Yes,
that's true. That's very true.
So if you don't know, now you know, as they say in the rap game. So just tell us about you guys. Give us the first date stuff,
Yeah, that's pretty fun. We were in marching band together, so it's great, high school sweetheart nerd story. We were both drummers, so we like to say we both marched to the beat of the same drum, and just got to know each other there.
That's a t-shirt.
To do that. Should have a ch on the end. So we got to know each other there, and Matt went on a mission, and I wrote him on his mission. He says that I Dear John him, but I actually just Dear Matted him. It's really different. It's not the same thing. So he can tell you more about that part. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, and so for those,
maybe in the bonus content we can get into the difference between a Dear John and a Dear Matt.
So those who can't put that into context, Latter-day Saints. So a lot of people hear about this, the 2-year mission thing, right, where you go somewhere in the world and you do a bunch of service projects, preach about Jesus, and so there's always in the culture the ominous do you have a girlfriend? Is she gonna wait for you over the 2 years, or is she out? So the Dear John reference is writing and saying, hey, missionary, turns out sitting here waiting for you while you're in Africa or Russia or somewhere, it's kind of a waste of my time. So I'm going to go date and have a good time. Enjoy your mission. So I'm curious what a Dear Matt is.
Let him answer that.
I remember, I think I was more than halfway through my church mission. And when I got that, and I was really incredibly sad, honestly. But it was I love you, I care for you, I need you to focus on your mission rather than me type thing. And so at that point I knew what was going on. I was like, yep, this is she's letting me go.
She's got a boyfriend.
She's got a boyfriend. If I really delved into more of the addictive part of things, I was struggling on my mission too. So that's part of my story.
Nice way of saying it.
Yeah. So, that helped me focus a little more. And so, it was good. I come back from my mission and I want her back. She was dating a guy, and I had to show up. So
he moved in next door, right down the street, got into my group of we did a little home evening group with some homies in my ward and in my group, and he was right there. And first day he comes home, he calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, want to go on a date?" And I was like, I think I
actually,
had a friend.
She ran away.
Yeah, I had a friend in town that was like, "Hey, our buddy Matt's home. You want to go see him?" And I was like, "Oh, I got to get back to school." I was one of those, young graduates from high school. I was only actually 17 when I graduated. I was just young for my class. And so he came back hot off a mission and was intent on finding a wife. And I was not intent on being somebody's wife. So I pretty much ran the other way. And he thankfully didn't take offense to that. He came up and just got in the groove with my friends and my roommates. My roommates decided to name him Betty because he was at our apartment so much that they thought they would just put a wig on him and call him one of the gals. So he fit in, and they teased him a lot, but he didn't give up.
First port date, I took her to Sonic.
Yeah.
Nice. So to all those young drummers out there marching in a band somewhere, don't ever quit. Don't ever quit. Courtesy of Matt.
Yeah.
And so tell us where addiction was at that point in time for you.
Ooh, you know, it was still really strong. It was on my mind constantly while out there. I struggled a number of ways out there on my mission, and you know, I hadn't even told my mission president. We have a leader out there that we that leads us, and I hadn't even told him. I hadn't told a stake president or a bishop throughout my whole my life. And
so you never told anybody.
Nope.
So tell us what the narrative was around that. You're like, hey, me and God are working on it, or you're just like, I'm just compartmentalizing this and omitting it from any conscious thought, or what was that process for you at that point in time?
I was too ashamed of letting people know the intimate details of the struggles that I was having. I was super ashamed of that I was struggling with it in the first place. And so that kept me from talking to anybody. It's like, if somebody knew about this, then what would they think of me? Right. And
what would they think of you?
Well, I had a lot of stories about that.
Yeah, please do tell. Yeah. I'm saying, so what were those stories?
The stories, well, part of that is, they wouldn't be my friend. They'd think that I was gross, pervert, so many more words, right? And that kept me from talking to anybody, really. I pushed a lot of people away, friends. I had friends and I let them go. I wouldn't really ever get close to anybody because I was too afraid of them really knowing who I was, or not who I was, but the choices that I was making. So,
but that is telling that you said who I was.
Yep. Yep.
So who did you see yourself as at that time?
Pretty much nothing. It really was. I was hiding in so many ways, and I didn't want anybody to know that I even existed. Honestly, even with Natalie, even though I was running after her and wanting her, I wanted her to make sure that I was okay, right? To make sure that I was an okay human being. That if I was able to date her and become her husband, wow, I almost said that backwards. And that things would be okay, right? That'd make my life okay, and
that it would turn you into something.
Yeah, turn me into something.
Did you hold the belief that if you got married, that then you'd be having sex in marriage and all your sexual compulsive behaviors would be fixed?
Yep, totally. Yep, I had that thought, and that didn't happen.
Turns out, no, that's when we've when you do that knowing laughter thing, you're like, ha 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 ha, right? Like, that's when we have a lot of knowing laughter on the podcast, with that being kind of a common thought. So you're getting married, and so Matt, you don't tell Natalie anything because you're like, yeah, this will fix it. So why bring it up, or how'd that go down?
Yeah, I didn't share anything with her. We got married. Didn't even tell her that I had any type of struggles like that. So she knew nothing about it, and it wasn't until about a year into marriage until she shared some intimate details about some things that she had experienced when she was younger, and then that gave me that turned into a possibility for me. As like, oh man, like, I should tell her. And it took me a whole day to even spit out the words, I've looked at porn in my life. I didn't admit that I was addicted, but just saying that I had looked at porn.
So
but at that point, I was like, what do we do with our lives?
Yeah. So Natalie, tell us that story. You're a year into this marriage and you disclose what?
Yeah. So we had even, I'll backtrack just a little bit.
Yeah.
Prior to marriage, we had a class because I was terrified of getting married. I was the epitome of naivety as an 18-year-old, and we got married when I was 18, so that's very young.
Yeah. And you were the youngest in your family, right?
Youngest in my family.
Yep.
Had seen, siblings go through some things and was determined to avoid any kind of painful experiences in marriage.
Sure.
Was doing my homework, checking all the boxes, thought I had it all figured out, and asked him prior to marriage in this class, I just don't want you to break my heart. I can handle anything, but please don't break my heart. Like I can't handle cheating. That's the thing I can't handle. And he just assured me up and down, that wasn't the case, and he would be there and protect me and all the things. And so this was devastating to me. But I disclosed some things around some childhood sexual experiences that I had with just cousins and different things that had happened in my life that I had not been proud of, and I hadn't shared openly. I had kind of generality shared, but not really openly. And I was taking...
Sorry, I'm going to ask all the questions that everyone's asking.
Yeah.
This is like sexual abuse, or this is like you being promiscuous, or put this in a camp for us?
Yeah. So sexual abuse starting out, and then having experiences with boyfriends and things where I just didn't feel like I had good boundaries around what was happening. So probably some of both, and not understanding, feeling a lot of guilt and shame over that experience, and not really understanding.
And a common experience with childhood sexual abuse is, as we say in therapy, right? What you don't repair, you repeat. And so I love it how Lecrae put it in his book, Being Molested as a Kid. He's like, it's like you had a radar then all of a sudden that you knew like all the other people who were screwed up in that department too. And then y'all just like kept reenacting what you couldn't fix. So it makes
Trauma
sense.
Reenactment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you're a year into marriage, and you're like, hey, boom, drop some knowledge. And so Matt, that opens the door for you that you're like, I probably need to say this. And so knowing what you know now about yourself, why was it so hard for you to disclose?
Because I didn't want her to know. Because I was holding on to an outcome with Natalie. I wanted to stay married. I still wanted to feel comforted by her. And my thoughts were, as if she was to leave, and I would go downhill, right? In a huge way. And I still went down the road, even after that, for a long time. And so a part of that process is really realizing that I really wanted her to save me, honestly. So,
as James knows,
Well
I've
put.
never gotten validation from women defining my identity. Neither has he.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, we don't know what you're talking about, madam. No personal experience, I swear. So tell us so like at that point in time, you kind of disclose everything, or
you bottle it back up and don't say anything for 10 years. Like, how did that go now after that?
Yeah. I'm going to speak to that.
oh yeah, or you can.
Yeah. Little things came out. It was kind of the very first step of disclosure of I think I'm experiencing this, but it's not a problem for me. I don't have a problem. It's okay for me to look at it. It's okay for me to do it. And I think it's fine. And this obviously was a big, conundrum for me, because I'm thinking, wait a second, I feel like I just got a whole blown inside of me, and you're telling me it's okay for you to, and it's not matching up, right? And the history and some of the things that have been shared aren't matching up. So I started to ask questions and dig a little deeper, and more trickle disclosure comes out. But it pretty much was about every year he'd kind of assure me, I'm not going to do it anymore. I can see that it hurts you. I have it taken care of. And then the next year I discover some more or something. So about every year to 2 years, there was a discovery.
And I started doing ARP classes, addiction recovery program.
Yeah, 12 step. Yeah, 12 step in the LDS church.
Yeah, 12 step. Yep. And so I did some of those things. Really wasn't into it, honestly, at that point, because I was still struggling a lot with addictive behaviors, and I really had no desire to get better. Honestly.
What was your level of disclosure once you were moving into the ARP world? Were you still hiding a lot?
Oh yeah. I put on a pretty good face.
Okay.
And I didn't really want people to know too. I was scared to death to go to 12-step programs because I didn't want to run into people that I knew.
Sure. So Natalie, where are you in? I find often that the partners fall into two camps. Either they know something is off and they just pretend it's not. Like, yeah, I see the smoke coming out of that window, but I'm just going to like keep mopping the kitchen, taking the kids where they need to go, and just planning Christmas, pretending everything's okay. Or there's it's on me to fix everything. And so did you fall into one of those two camps? Was it different for you?
I'm going to say probably had a foot squarely planted in both of those camps at the same time. One day it was, how are we going to get the help? Where are we going to find the resources? I'm going to do all the digging, researching. I'm going to figure out how to fix us and save us. And the next day it was, I don't know what to do. And I'm so completely overwhelmed by this realization that it's out of my control and out of my wheelhouse, that I just am going to focus on what I can control and hope and pray that it's going to go away. And that if I pray enough, if I do enough good stuff, if I help enough people, if I'm just good enough, that'll make up for what's lacking in our relationships.
The good old try harder gospel, one of my personal favorite strategies.
Yep, strive a little bit deeper.
Yep.
Yeah,
so help me understand how we go through this like holding pattern of managing, right? To you ending up in Desert Solace, which is a 90-day inpatient program.
So it finally got to that point where she had enough. It had been 13 years.
Yeah, about 13 years of active addiction with a disclosure at least every 2 years. And really just, he had, we'd done counseling, we'd done groups, we'd done in outpatient therapies, we'd done all the things that we could think to do at this point that were supposed to make it better. And really,
and by we, you mean you.
Yeah.
Because you're like talking him into it, right?
That's exactly what
just calling a spade here, right? If I'm wrong, change it. But.
No, totally. You're absolutely correct.
Right on. So, yeah, we meaning hauling the horse and the wagon and all of the things behind it with my bare hands and bare feet. So, yeah, so I was tired and honestly, I had been suicidal at various points, just hopeless. Because I didn't see a way out and I was in so much pain. And finally, we had been separated for about 9 months. We'd had multiple separations. This one was the longest. I had decided if something major didn't change, then I was headed for divorce. And he became suicidal at that point and various points before that. But that was a very serious time for you. Maybe you want to share?
Yeah, I was at that point, like I felt hopeless in the whole space. I've tried a lot of different things. Wasn't in the headspace to do it. It really wasn't my choice. And so, yeah, I walked the bridge. I spent time out looking for ways to walk away from life itself. And so at that point, she said, look, I love you, but I need you to make a choice here. It's either going to be going to rehab or we're getting a divorce. What do you want to choose? And so at that point in my life, I finally, and we had some pretty major experiences where we lost a brother-in-law in a drunk driving incident. It wasn't him that was drinking. He had his daughter on a motorcycle and they ran into a vehicle, but that was a big impact in my life of seeing how short life could be. And so it turned me on to some new ideas. And so I said, yes, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Didn't know how I was going to pay for it, but I said, I'm going for it anyway. And all that worked out. Everything worked out the way it needed to go. So I just said, well, in fact, I prayed to God and I said, during that time, I was ready to walk away from God too. I was like, I don't even know what to believe about God. And so I finally took that last chance and said, all right, I'm going forward. Make it happen if it's going to happen. And it happened. And so we made it to Desert Solace, or I did, and I had no idea what was going to happen from there. I had to, in fact, when I went there, Mark.
Yeah, if you thought a Dear Matt letter on a 2-year mission was the thing,
well,
now we're playing in the big leagues. Now we're playing in the big leagues. But I want to go back because this is where I want to find some gold nuggets here. So, Natalie, how do you go from managing this experience that's literally making you suicidal because you're in so much pain, right? And you keep wondering, it's got to be me. I'm doing something wrong. I'm, like right, putting it clearly where it's all clear. How do you do that for 13 years and then all of a sudden flip a switch of radical empowerment where you're like, hey, bro, either you go inpatient or I'm divorcing you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't feel like it was overnight like that. It was step by step. And part of my journey was that I became pregnant with our last daughter. In between, some things happened. I lost a bunch of pregnancies, and then I had a stillbirth, my daughter, and I was at my lowest health. I also had a lot of health issues, a lot of autoimmune type issues that have come as a result of just years of stress and not being truthful, I feel like, with my body and really honest.
Body Keeps the Score. It's a good book. Yep.
It is. Absolutely. And that experience, she was literally the only reason that I was staying alive at that point. And when I lost her, I realized that I didn't have a reason to be here anymore, which didn't make sense to me because I loved my kids. I loved my family. I loved Matt. I wanted to keep going. And I realized that I was just in so much pain and something had to change. And, and then experiences kept happening. We ended up adopting a little boy, and that was an awesome experience. And then having a surprise little boy 8 months later. So they were kind of twinners. And so we saw a lot of miracles kind of unfold, even in the middle of all of these crazy hard things that I was experiencing. And it got to the point one night, I was 2 weeks after my C-section with my little boy. I was in bed. I have full body muscle weakness episodes that happened to me as part of this autoimmune disease. And we had a disagreement, and Matt left me with the little boy in the bouncer on the bed and all the kids asleep. And we had been separated, and he left the house and left me in that state. And for the first time in my life, I just realized that he wasn't in a safe state, and I wasn't in a safe place to be with him. And I was self-betraying by continuing to stay in that situation, and putting my kids really in danger at the same time. And there was a lot of emotional things that were going on that were not healthy, but it really took that last kind of straw physical thing for me to realize that I couldn't keep putting my trust in this person who wasn't in a trustworthy space right now. And that's probably what gave me the strength to make some changes.
What gave you the motivation? Because to me, that also sounds like a really good reason to be suicidal, which you said had come up. So what pushed you that way of no, I'm moving into hope for a better life, dude, get on the bus, versus this is overwhelming. I should just exit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really a miracle. And I can't take any credit for that because Jesus, take the wheel. I'm not driving. And I had a neighbor who had found some information on Desert Solace, brought it over to me, talked to me about it. I just give it up to God and say, look, I can't change this. You got to basically just take the wheel. And I was like, yeah, it sounds great, but he's not going to go. And I don't think it's going to work. And, anyway, she did all the research, did all the digging. She talked about the insurance and all of the questions I would have asked that I was just too tired to ask at that point to the founder. And she brought this all back to me. And I knew that it was, if we were going to have a chance, this was our last chance. And this was the way that we could maybe find healing. And I had to know that I had done everything in my power. I loved my family. I loved Matt. I saw goodness in him. I could see that he wanted so badly to recover, that he wanted so badly to be able to hold our family, and that he just wasn't okay himself. He didn't have a relationship with God. He didn't have a relationship with himself. He didn't know who he was. And I felt a lot of sadness and empathy for him, really, at the end of the day. I didn't really want to hurt him back. I just wanted him back. I wanted the person that he was.
Yeah. I just wanted to rewind a little bit. You used the word, one of my favorite terms, self-betrayal. For somebody who hasn't heard that idea, like, just tell me a little bit, and tell the audience a little bit about how do you know when you're self-betraying? Like, what is that?
Yeah, it's a little bit like having your roots kind of into the ground and stretching out your limbs and leaves and trying to stretch into places that feel like when somebody just kind of cuts that limb off. and you find out it's you, that it feels like when you know the truth inside of you and you kind of go against that truth, knowing that it's going to hurt you, knowing that maybe it's not the best thing, but you're wanting so badly to affect change in another person that you're willing to go beyond really what you have to give. So I look at it like a inside out bucket, like a squeezed out bucket that's just dropping little droplets left, but it doesn't really have anything left inside of it. And so that's what it feels like for me. Some people call it codependency. I think there's a better model now, which is more along the lines of just not giving from a grounded, real space of knowing that that's what your boundaries are and what you have to give, and really extending outside of that. So I was pretty masterful at that for a long time.
Yes, you're in a room of fellow travelers on some of those ones. So a lot of people, I'm coming back to you, Matt. A lot of people make a big deal about coming forward versus getting caught. And I say that as someone who, in my recovery, always came forward and was always self-motivated to do recovery. Never got caught in my 3 rounds of disclosure. So someone who's on like the pretty side of that conversation, I actually think it's crap. I think sometimes people come forward because they want to control the outcome. And so they're like, okay, I'll come forward. So the same control you were talking about, Matt. And I think there's so many people who get caught, start recovery for all the wrong reasons, partners and people struggling in addiction, who end up really getting there and kind of finding the motivation. And so as you have this experience, Matt, of like, okay, I'll go to the meetings even though I don't care. Okay, I'll try all the different things because you're telling me to do it, and blah, 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 blah. When did that switch flip for you from managing, what do I have to say or do to keep her here with me and control the outcome? When did it flip for you to, no, I want to do this for me because I want a better life?
Yeah, I think that as I started that when I had that opportunity to go to Desert Solace, that's when it really happened. I really had that opportunity to say, this really sucks, in a lot of major ways. There's no words, I could have a lot of words I could say, but you probably don't want to hear them. And so I so at that point, basically, I said, I do want a better life. I don't know what recovery looked like at that point, but I want a better life. And I wanted to treat my family better because I could see that I wasn't doing that. And so at that point, what I did is I went to rehab. I was still in it I wasn't letting go of the outcome.
So that switch flipped before you went to Desert Solace.
Yes.
What caused it to switch? What finally pulled you into that hope?
I'm not quite sure. It was opening myself up to a possibility, because I still was skeptical about Desert Solace, but I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks into Desert Solace where I had some experiences. I had a staff member, Kyle. He changed my life in so many ways. He says,
"What up, Kyle? Shout out!"
Yeah, well, shout out for Kyle. But yeah, he basically said, because I kept on saying I'm trying to do this and trying to do that. He says, well, Matt, you can try all week long or 2 weeks from now. When are you actually going to show up? 2 weeks from now? A week from now? Or tomorrow? Like, it started to open me up to some different ideas. And even the owner, Mark, he talked to me and he said, because I was worried about some insurance things at home, and he says, Matt, are you willing to let all that go? Even Natalie, and I had to say, okay, I get it. It finally clicked for me. I was still holding on to her and everything else. I had to be willing to let go of everything that I thought I needed to help myself be okay.
So tell me the magic of letting go. For somebody who's out there that's just like is wanting to hang on, wanting to keep control of a thing or two, tell me about letting go. All the good and the bad, the pain and the joy.
It's an energy shift, man. It's learning to love yourself and accepting yourself, whether your wife's there or not, whether your kids are there or not. And having the ability to say, I am okay. I'm perfect just as I am through whatever experience that I'm having. And it's okay. I'm okay. My wife's okay. Even though it's not. Like, it's having both ends of the spectrum. It's not okay and it's okay. And you're experiencing both at the same time. It's quite confusing and yet fulfilling at the same time. I don't even know how to explain that. It's pretty unexplainable.
I don't know. I think you did a fair job right there.
Yeah.
I think we can take that to the bank. And so this dude rolls up back from, so you're dropping him off like, dude, inpatient or divorce, pick. And
she didn't even drop me off.
And sent him on a bus.
Makes sense.
Actually, you got to love this story. I drove down there while it was snowing. This was the year that Idaho had about 5 foot of snow. Blackfoot did. And it was snowing when I left. And they're about ready to shut down all the roads. So I felt like something was keeping me wanting to not go. So I just had to rush down there. Basically, I drove myself down there.
So he goes down there, right? It's divorce, inpatient, choose, and he comes back, and it's like,
yeah, it's interesting because I saw him at intervals because we have a family weekend. We call it. We go down and we visit,
right.
And each one of those family weekends, something would be a little bit different about him, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and I didn't have a lot of hope in it at first. But when he came back, one of the things I noticed is he asked if he could give me a hug, which prior to this, I hadn't even wanted to shake his hand. I was pretty bitter. So I came from that space to he's here, he's wanting to give me a hug, and I allow that. At that point, I felt safe enough. And for the first time in my life, I felt something coming from him. And it wasn't taking love from me. He was giving it. He was there providing that. And I could feel that energetically. And for 13 years of marriage, I had never felt him standing in his wholeness, offering something to me. And it was beautiful, and
That's
it was
profound.
different.
Like you could feel the taking for 13 years until all of a sudden there was a giving, and you're like, oh my gosh, what was that? What was that like for you?
And I want to insert some definitional in my travels. I have come to, James knows, recently I've been into all the hippie energy stuff. I call it hippie stuff because it's all the stuff that when someone tells you, you're like, okay, go meditate on a log and that's going to do something for my childhood trauma. And then you go do, you're like, oh, it kind of does, whatever. But what I have learned as in my active faith in Christ, right, is that when people say the word energy, that's just people saying the spirit. Like I've learned, like I can interchange those words and it works every time. Like it's just like, when people say grace or the atonement, right? Latter-day Saints, I'll say the atonement. General Christian people say the word grace. And we're like, I don't get you, Latter-day Saints. I'm like, just substitute that word and we're all speaking the same language. And so how did that spiritual shift happen in you? If I take the word energy and switch it for spirit, right, and the influence of the Spirit of God's Spirit, how did that shift for you, Matt? Because you went into Desert Solace and you weren't giving a lot of that out, apparently, and you go and now you are. So what happened?
Well, I always put it this way. Going to a 90-day recovery program like that, or inpatient anyway, was like 20 years of therapy, and so every day was group, actually a couple of times a day, seemed like, and so I learned a lot. Equine therapy, and I think it was a shift over time in many ways, and it was basically coming to an awareness each day of like, oh, I didn't know I was showing up that way. Oh, I didn't know I was showing up that way. And so I kept on having these experiences and shifting. And during that time at Desert Solace, we learned a lot about love and fear and whether we choose into love and fear. Those are the two main ways of being in which most human beings live. So I'm either going to show up this way or that way.
Separate for me the difference when you're talking about the difference between what you learned and what you experienced. Because I just heard you say both. You're like, I learned all this, but then I experienced this. So what really shifted you? The learning, the experience, the combination of both? And what did you experience? The learning, I think, and a lot of people listening, I think the learning, frankly, is the easier part. Do it through the 12 steps, do it through therapy, do a CSAT and the Patrick, like whatever you learn, the recovery stuff, right? But tell me about what you experienced.
So the experience was a complete and utter paradigm shift, like 180 degrees, pretty much. And I started looking at my life and actually experiencing my life. Like we had a friend or a mentor there, Shane Scott.
Shout out. What up, Shane?
Yeah, he was a great
Big Shane,
man.
baby.
Still great man. And he influenced my life. And he would come into the facility and say, "What you experiencing today?" Because the main focus was, what are you experiencing? How are you experiencing your life? And are you afraid to experience it, right? Like, if you're afraid, you're afraid. If you're not afraid, great. Whatever it is, just accept it and learn from it. And then at that point, you get to choose. Okay, I'm afraid. How long do I want to keep experiencing this? Mm-hmm. And I'll experience that until I stop experiencing it, until I make that choice. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm shifting into acceptance. Okay, that's what I experienced, and more. That was a great and awful experience sometimes, and I want to experience this more. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's explaining it. I'm explaining it the best I can.
That's killer. Accepted is one of mine and James's favorite words. We named the therapy practice is accepted, because it's stepping into that. So I know, agree with that 100%, and love how you just described the experience of actually what you're experiencing. Is we often will say hard, simple but hard, right? And so so how did you make repair with this great woman sitting next to you? Because I don't imagine you came home and you're like, oh, his energy's different, and then it was just like sunshine and rainbows, and now you help other people, or what? How'd you make repair with her?
A very short version of it.
It took me probably 5 years to do a disclosure, an actual disclosure, and get it all written down. And actually, being in Desert Solace, I had to let go of some really deep, dark secrets. Wow, deep, dark secrets, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I've got some of those.
Like touch. I don't know what you want me to talk about here, but there were some pretty deep things that I was like, I got to let go of all that. And I've got to accept the fact that anything that I've done, whether I go to jail or not, anything, I had to be open to that possibility and accept the consequence, if that makes sense. Like, I had to be willing to accept any part of that. And that mental shift allowed me to put everything on the table, because I didn't want to. And I couldn't heal at that point.
Yeah. And Natalie, what did disclosure mean for you? That experience?
I think for the first time, Matt was really ready to step into his whole past history, like every piece, every part. And that didn't come all at once. We did a full disclosure therapeutically, and then that was the main big things that needed to be disclosed. And then there was things that he'd remember, and we were set up for that, so he could share with me other things as he remembered them. But having him bring and offer me the truth about his experience, this was his experiences from the time he was a little boy till now. Here's this man that's standing before me that I didn't know who he was. I didn't have any kind of reference point for what he was experiencing, and I couldn't connect with that because I didn't have a way to see him. So he was allowing me to see him for the first time, and voluntarily sharing who he was and where he'd been and his experiences and how they had affected him. And that experience for me just created this space where I could finally feel hope. I could feel like he's human. He's a human being. He's got really difficult stuff. He's got really amazing stuff. He's got everything in between, and so do I. And I can relate with that.
Yeah, you finally got to actually know him. I think to go on what you said earlier in the episode, Matt, it's like, no one's ever going to know me at that level. Keep him arm's length, right? And so in the process,
we're like,
keep going.
5 billion miles away.
I agree with that. So Natalie, what disclosure was big? What changed for you?
I think he was stepping into trust with himself. Like, I trust myself enough that even if you don't accept me or say I'm okay, I'm still okay. And that just paved this road for me where I could step into that same trust with myself and for him. So creating that truth where we could build on, and a foundation where everything's out in the open. There's nothing left that's this big bomb that's going to hit. It just allowed me to feel safe with him and know that if he was willing to tell me the deep, dark secrets that he didn't want to tell anybody, that, like, we could probably get through some pretty rough stuff if he was willing to go there for me and for him to heal. We probably have the capacity to do some other hard things and some really cool things together. So that was the beginning, probably, point of some really amazing healing for us. And the beginning of recovery, like what we would call our real recovery phase after the 13 years.
So Matt, you opened the episode saying you were super ashamed, and now here you are on Unashamed, Unafraid. Tell me about the difference in between. Like, what would you say to that super ashamed part of yourself to be like, hey, someday you're going to be unashamed. This is what you need to remember or know about the power of that. What would you tell that super ashamed, super afraid version of Matt?
That you're okay with every experience. You're more than okay. Like every experience that you have in your life is designed just for you. You get to create that. You created everything you have up until this point, and you're still going to create going forward. You are a powerful human being. And that is what I've leaned into ever since then, as I've really had to dig into that power of creating my life. And whatever that looks like is up to me. And how I experience it is up to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay, whatever that looks like, whatever it is, because I'm having the experience. If I deny my experience, I'm denying my existence.
Love that. Awesome. So on this journey, at what point, or did you tell family and friends, or was it like, no, we were like well out of Desert Solace before anybody even knew a thing? Like, what was this unfolding of you moving from super ashamed to unashamed? Like, what did it look like in your daily walk?
So, I started talking to more of my family members. In fact, there was a moment I put it on Facebook. I didn't have Facebook at that time.
Yeah.
I put it on my wife's Facebook.
On MySpace.
On MySpace.
We all need to make that come back. That's one of my life goals.
Post-Desert,
MySpace cool again.
Post-Desert Solace or pre-Desert Solace?
After, post. And so I shared in that space. I shared it in church. Like at that point, I didn't really care what people thought. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you're going to get to know me because this.
Love it. And Natalie, what would you share with that 13-year-old long version of you, from the naive start to the just managing with a 1 foot squarely in both camps, to quote you from earlier in the episode? What would you say to her, knowing what you know now?
Just that I'm always co-creating with my creator, and also that every experience is meant to create whatever I need for the next experience. Nothing is an accident. Everything happened for a reason. Even the times that I didn't trust myself, I didn't hold a boundary, I felt lost, confused. Even those times contributed to the space where I got strength to step into what I needed to do to move forward. And I wish I could tell myself, just don't be so afraid. Just trust the process, trust yourself, trust God. Even when you can't feel him, even when you can't hear him, he's there. He's guiding, he's directing. Like, never doubt that was part of the life experience that you had. Even now, there's times and days when I want to hear myself say that again.
Well, and lucky for you, you have you now, right? Matt talked about earlier being the experience. So, so tell us now, as we wrap up the episode, y'all are doing some pretty big stuff in the 12th step, as they say, right? Where upon having had this awakening, having this change, reaching out and helping others. So tell us about the coaching.
Yeah, so we started Truth Rising. It's our brand of coaching. About a year ago, we work with couples, men and women, doing the same journey, that same walk that we went through. We're trying to teach these same principles of conscious creation and just living in a state of love versus fear, and really taking whole responsibility for our own, like what we're creating, our own reactions, our own contributions to our relationships and our life. And so that's been an amazing journey. We've loved working. We work together with couples. That's one of our favorite things to do. Mm-hmm. Just really helping people in that space to find themselves and really get to know who they are and ground back down to that core sense of being unashamed and unafraid of their experiences, and walking into that in a way that that serves their relationship, it serves their highest purpose. If you'd add to that, Matt.
Yeah, and really digging deep into, why are you coming to this space, right? Like, that's what I had to do when I went to Desert Solace is, why am I here? And am I all in? And what does that take? And like she says, taking full responsibility for that, admitting when I'm not, admitting when I am, and walking through that whole process and breaking through some major beliefs. I really love talking to men and noticing when they're stuck in a belief thought system and acknowledging that, helping them walk through that process and see it and see the light turn on in their eyes and be like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that, So I love doing that. I'm actually working on a 90-day program currently, not done yet. But
Super
it's
cool.
in process.
Yeah, I remember when I switched from doing commercial real estate and was running a program, I was like, oh, this is why people become workaholics. I just didn't love what I did before. Now I get it. So I feel you on seeing the light come on and the loving that process. So if people want to engage you guys, where do they find you?
Yeah, they can find us on truthrising.com. Coaching.com.
Yeah, coaching.com. Yeah.
Or if we're on Facebook.
Truth Rising
Coaching.
Sorry, truthrisingcoaching.com.
Yep.
Okay.
We also work for a company called Choose Recovery Services. We both coach with them. So they can find us there as well as groups and podcasts, stuff like that they're producing that's really great content.
Super cool.
We love what we do. It's been an amazing space to give back, and we wouldn't be doing anything else. Like you said, we're kind of workaholics in the best way, but we're still trying to find balance.
They've turned the band nerd into recovery nerd, which I'm a big fan of both. Fan of both to bring it full circle. So in spirit of the music, as you know on the show, we always have people share a song. So if you guys had a song that kind of represents your journey, that song would be?
I know one, but what do you
go ahead.
Coming for you?
You go ahead.
I love the song Savior, Redeemer of My Soul. It's been one of my favorites for a long time. So it just kind of talks about that whole journey. And also just come thou fount of every blessing. So just tune my heart to sing thy praise and seal my heart. It's prone to wander. We all have spaces that we wander and we walk away from God. And at times, but he never walks away from us. He's there through all of that. So we've definitely seen that.
Preach.
And I like Amazing Grace. And what's the sinking the ships?
Oh, burn the ships.
Burn the ships.
Burn the ships.
Yep. And now you got to pick one.
Oh, you had to do that to me.
You got four on the table, so pick one of the four, guys.
I like Amazing Grace a lot. It really hits my soul pretty hard because I really was blind, and now I can see. So
yes, and so going out on Amazing Grace. I'm the Chris Tomlin version. Have you heard the Chris Tomlin version? Okay, right. Okay, Natalie's scenarios. We're good there. So, so find you guys, right? Talk about that. That'll be in the show notes as well. Invite all of us who want to get in the bonus content, to Soapbox, all the other stuff we didn't get to the episode, all the questions, all of our people sitting here in the back, board members, different people. We get into that when we get into the bonus content, with Matt and Natalie. So that's for outsiders. As you know, our outsiders are bold, accepted, and unashamed. And they're the ones who help us with the movement, make things possible here at the podcast. So if you would like to join, we invite you to donate. We are a nonprofit 501c3, and you go to unashamedandunafraid.com/donate. And what we do with that money is we run this podcast and we create scholarships to do different things and cool programs that we found to help people in recovery. And so if you're in need of a scholarship, yes, you are worthy. So we invite you to go to unashamedandunafraid.com/scholarships. Follow us on social media at unashamedandunafraid, and go into iTunes and give us 5 stars, because that's how the algorithm things work that decide whether or not when people search things we show up. So help us spread the message of hope. Matt and Natalie are getting on their phone right now and giving us 5 stars as we talk. So that's super cool of them to do. And yes, that is how you gaslight someone. So just if you needed some help around that. And so we hope you join us in the bonus content. If not, Matt and Natalie, it's been awesome having you guys on here. And for everyone listening, we invite you to continue, like Matt and Natalie and all of us trying our best in our humanness, to continue to be unashamed.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
It's been awesome.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word, my hope secures. He will my shield and portion me, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow. The sun forbear to shine. But God, who called me here below, will be forever mine. Will be forever.